Ayin Beis, Volume 1. We're middle of Discourse number 25. Chapter 96. Page 185. Kuf Pei Hei. Okay. In chapter 91, he began the explanation, the second explanation in Sefirah is from the word story. Briefly, the containers tell the story of the energies, because energy on its own is in a state of ascension and being removed, not grounded, and it's the containers that reveal, like the wick that grounds the fire. And I explained that in detail, the previous discourse. And now in chapter 95, he went back to the words of Rabbi R Shem Tov, which is the second interpretation. What is it? That what it says, Rabbi R Shem Tov, that the Sefirot reveal the hidden thoughts. He begins, does not mean only that the containers reveal the energy. In other words, think of it like this. There's Er HaChesed. Shmaya Vavtalion are teaching. In their ideas, there's, in a shapeless way, there's an approach that is more lenient. Hillel, the containers of Hillel ground that, and it comes out to be a psak and an opinion that becomes a final ruling that we're lenient in this particular case. Shammai's Kalim, being a personality of Gvura, he takes from that idea and grounds and shapes and defines that it's Osir. So the Chesed and Gvura, as we learned, the leniency or the stringency were there in the idea of Shammai Vavtalion, but there it was a concept. It was a theory, and you could interpret it many ways. The Kalim, so to speak, of the Mekablim of the two students here, one Shammai, one Hillel, one Gvura, one Chesed, gave it shape and so on. Which would be like, let's say you learn from a teacher, and the teacher speaks about a theory and idea. And then the student sits down and says, 1 second, what does this idea lead me to? And as they begin to spell it out, the conclusion seems to be a certain particular way. So what is the Keli doing in this case? It's revealing what was there. So he's saying, Rabbi R Shem Tov saying that it reveals the hidden thoughts, in Eina Kavanah does that. That it's just revealing the The Kavanah is that it's revealing also that the whole Sefirot now, energies in containers, together. The container, yes, it reveals its energy. In other words, the Kilei HaChesed reveals the Er HaChesed. But together, they both reveal, like in Lashon here, Megalos says, Enos of Shalamayla Atzilus. Reveals the divine energy that is beyond, the energy beyond atzilus. In other words, even beyond Shmaya Vavtalion in the example. So to speak, like where they took the idea from. Which he didn't really conclude, which he's going to conclude now in chapter 96, but he began to understand this, went into a long discussion, a chapter, on what is atzilus. Because we're saying atzilus. So atzilus is, the purpose of atzilus is to reveal godliness in this world. That's as he puts it. Close in atzilus, sheyegilei lekuz be'elmus. The Lashon of the Zohar, begin dishtamudin bei. That through the spheres, we should know him. And then he goes down at length, and we'll sum it up, says, because creation itself, I think this is Sefirah. It says, Inyan Esefirah Atzilus, he begin dishtamudin bei. That says in Zohar, it says, the Klolis Inyan Esefirah Atzilus will begin dishtamudin bei. It's for sure that's Esefirah Atzilus. Yeah. I know, we say that way. When you say it, it's a tam habriya. But if you look specifically, it's a tam of atzilus in the briya. The tam of atzilus in the briya. Tam of elam hazar tachten is only dira b'tachtenim. Because dira b'tachtenim, because that's the whole point he's making here. Because the material world does not reveal godliness.
That's what Shem Tov is revealed. Before that, I think the bottom said because we didn't.
No. I'm telling you. Read it. You told me you learned in L'Kut Sichos Chelik Vav, right? Shmei's Beis. The reasons. There are three reasons. I'm telling you. The reason of beginning Talmud is a reason for atzilus. That's the end of the day. Mukubalim that say it are talking about atzilus. The Zohar says it on Seshes Fish. It doesn't say why the world was created. Yes, look, let's put it this way. When you have atzilus, our world can understand God. But let's put it this way. His Shabbos itself, let's continue. This is actually what he's saying. He doesn't bring the Taidira b'tachtenim. Creation itself, he says, does not reveal. Because creation is created in a way of concealment, of distance. Without that, there'd be no yesh. So this, when you look at this world, yes, we'll soon talk. There's something you know about God, but it's very minimal. And he goes further. So there wouldn't even have been atzilus, because atzilus plays a second role, as we said. Besides helping us understand God, and through God we know God, is also atzilus. It's the other way around. God manifests in atzelim elikim, in a shape and form, a structure, through which the ayin eliki, through that, creates. And without that, you wouldn't have a relationship at all. So how do we have a relationship? How do we know? It's because it goes through atzilus, and atzilus gives us a certain sense of understanding of the divine. And even though his Shabbos itself, he says, even though creation itself testifies to a creator, because nothing can create itself, we're murkiv, all the reasons he gives, the world constantly erodes. And we also can know somewhat of the haflah. We know that the creator has to be completely beyond existence. So he answers two things. In addition to number one, that itself, knowing that, is knowledge. The knowledge of it is because of atzilus. So yes, as the world testifies, but the fact that we can appreciate and comprehend it is through atzilus. And number two, that knowledge is a very basic one. So in general, you don't know any details about it. And even the haflah is also to say that God is beyond the crass material of this world is not really the true wonder and awe and exaltation of the divine. Where do you get that real haflah? That all comes through atzilus and the details. It's basically what he says. It means at the Kaddish v'shimcha Kaddish, he's beyond nivdal, completely separate. His name is separate, but from the name comes malchus. His name malchus. There comes a level that manifests. Basically, that's the level of malchus. All levels of malchus. Malchus of Ein Sof, the malchus before atzilus, the malchus of atzilus into biyah. So we see from all this that if you go to atzmus itself, you would not have a revelation. Obviously, he qualifies this early by saying, of course, with God you can create without atzilus, but there wouldn't be, from our point of view, a yediyah nelikus. We would not have any appreciation, being able to reconnect. So from atzmus alone, and even from the oyed of atzmus, meaning Eid Ein Sof, before it manifests in a shir atzmei b'kreyach, as he put it, hashara for midah gvul, that's beyond. So what you have now, that atzilus is rooted in what? In the Eir HaGvul. Remember, there's 10 hidden spheres where God, the infinite light, envisioned one scenario, these 10 spheres. So that reveals what's concealed. And because there's gilis and midas pratis, here you have chesed, gvura, chochma, bina, and so on, we have an appreciation of the details of so-called God's personality. Kavyoch. And that's what means begin dish tamudin. Here he says lay, b'midas delay. So in other words, it's through the spheres and in the spheres and through the spheres that because they contain it and they reveal it, like we spoke much earlier in the previous discourse, it's like the words that tell the story. So therefore, we have here that Eris and Kalim of Atzilus is basically revealing the conceal that was there before. Okay. So now we conclude the subject matter. I just wanted to add one thing about the sources for this concept. The second interpretation is basically based on a footnote, a hagah, a gloss from the Tzemach Tzedek on a Maimer Vayuch HaYesora Tovkuf Samach Vov of the Alter Rebbe. Well, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the Me'er Shanim, Esrim Shanim, Sheva Shanim, the levels of Kesed and so on, the numbers. It's also connected to the world of numbers. Where's there a higher number? Where's there a lower number? But the main thing in that discourse in Tov Kuf Samach Vav, which is 5566, the Alter Rebbe speaks primarily that Sefirot are from the word Bahir, illuminate, which will be the third interpretation that he's going to discuss here. But in a long footnote, in a long Hagah, a long gloss, Tzemach Tzedek brings this interpretation, this one of story. And it's basically the basis of much of the ideas here. That's one source. Another one is from a mimer called Heidul Hashem, Chanukah Tov Kuf Samach Daled, where the Alter Rebbe discusses the whole inyan of Eish Eichla, fire. And that's the whole concept that the yesida Eish is dark on its own. That energy on its own, air on its own, elevates, and it needs the container, is discussed there at length. In the explanation of Avram Zokon Baba Yomim, actually. Because Baba Yomim means levushim. Maybe that's going to be the end of the Maimon. The garments. Garments are containers. They're the ones that draw down the energy. And there he says that on its own, air and atzmus are beyond. And it's the kelim that draw it down. But he doesn't connect it to the story element. The story element is the connection from the Tzemach Tzedek's Hagah. I'm just giving you the source here. But an interesting thing, the Alter Rebbe's Maimon that I found, he says two things. The container is like the keli hanechas, like the wick that contains and grounds it. But then, and it's due to the fact that it has a bittel to the air, that's why it draws it down. But here he goes on. If you remember last Maimer, he says the reason for that is because the source of the containers is higher than the energy. That's where the energy senses it. In the Maimer in Tov Kuf Samach Daled in Heidul Hashem, what he says is interesting. He says that besides the fact that the container grounds it, he says that the air, what's the word he uses there? The air is contained as long as it has something to consume. In other words, because there's a yesh, and the yesh is prepared to transform itself, the energy will remain there as long as it needs. And as soon as there's nothing to transform, the energy disappears. So in other words, its whole purpose is that there should be resistance. The resistance of our resistance is what fuels the flame to descend, to do its job. I found it to be fascinating because the Rebbe Rashab doesn't bring quite that, but he does remember, if you recall, he said, isn't the purpose of the oil also to go down? He says, but no, but the air has to retain its property to be dovuk. So think about it. What's going on when a fire is actually burning something? It needs two things. It needs the fuel, or else it wouldn't stay here. There was no more fuel, the fire it goes out. So it needs it. But at the same time, it needs to burn it up. It cannot become like the fuel. If the flame ceases to be like, sometimes the fuel is too strong, and it also will extinguish the flame. So the flame has to retain its flaming properties in order to consume. In Aveda means that it has to be constantly yearning to godliness and fighting with the animal soul and refining it. But without the animal soul, it has no fuel to burn. It's a very interesting part. So, in other words, well, no, Begashmi is the flame has nothing to hold on to, so it doesn't stay. In Aveda, the air, if it doesn't have a cheshek to deal with, in that sense, yeah. It's not like really on its own. It's just because without that, let's be honest, God doesn't need air. Like the Gemara, what does he need light for? So ultimately, it's the purpose of it. Like we said, the purpose of it is to come down to this world, but its nature is not. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm just pointing it out. But I think when you combine with what the Rebbe Rashab says, that the root of the kelim is higher, you get even better than that, because that's what's going on. What the oil can never achieve its power. It's basically when the oil is connected to its source, it's very satisfied, but it doesn't achieve real power until it's actually consuming and burning something. That's when it's like. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. So right now he's going back now to the R Shem Tov. So v'oidzos, we're learning up chapter 96. So after stating, as I said, what atzilus is. Yeah. I just found the example to be beautiful. Like Avonim, he says stones don't have that, so the air doesn't stay there. There's nothing to, Yeah. So now, after explaining what atzilus is, he goes back. In addition to this, That's why it says lay. 1 second. Because no. I think because he says there's delay. No, because it's relevant. Look now. He says va'edzais. In addition to this, that through the 10 spheres we know the divine that's higher than atzilus. So here's my question. My question is this. He just said that. What's the etzais? He began by saying that R Shem Tov, you cannot say that the container just reveals its oir. Then he goes to the whole thing of atzilus is revealing. And then he says, he just said that atzilus is revealing. What is it revealing? It's revealing the divine that's higher than atzilus. So I think that may be what he means by delay. Because what happens in atzilus, what happens is, begin the shtamuden lay, b'midis delay. Then maybe he's talking that in atzilus, talking about the revelation of the Eretz and Kelim is within atzilus. Atzilus knows that which is beyond.
Can you read it by etzais? Shall we besides the fact that the Eretz is associated with the same section numbers?
And then what's the Eisfir? Go ahead. Yeah, please do. If you have a Eisfir, that would be great. I wish that. Now then it would say the Etzais is the way I'm reading it. I don't think there's a, because I know in the next chat, and then later he says even more. I think not. I think the Etzais. So my wondering is, let me read again how he read it. I know. Okay, I know what the is. You have to read it more, not so, I'll tell you what he means. If you read, remember this was once written in one flow. There was no kitzur in between. He's saying like this. The purpose of atzilus is to reveal godliness in this world. This is a whole introduction to go back to explain the Rabbi Shem Tov. Now, what kind of godliness is it revealing in the world? You could say it reveals what atzilus is. It reveals midas of the Hashem. L'cha Hashem Agdula, Hagvura, Teferes. It reveals, that's why he said Mishtamud Lay. That's why I think he said midas delay. It reveals that God has Chochmah, God has Bina, God has... And that's it. So, don't look at it like it's a flow, it's one flow. The Eijais is saying, no, it reveals in the world also which is higher than atzilus.
Then the third line, it's okay.
But he begins an explanation. Let's understand it. So he begins a whole explanation. What is atzilus? Is to reveal godliness in this world. Now he's going back to the beginning of Tzadik Hey. Yeah. That's the pshat for sure. The beginning of Tzadik Hey made the statement clear. Then the explanation. So explanation is like this. You could say like this. No, he's not right. Exactly. That's what's going on. I was wondering not about. I understood he's going back there. My concern was I was trying to understand the flow, but the flow is very clear. Bottom line is, it's like you could say the Torah reveals godliness to this world, but what level of godliness? You could say it only reveals atzilus. So now he says v'eidzes. Now he's going back. To go further. In other words, atzilus' revelation of the divine is not just of the atzilus level; it's also beyond atzilus. That's what he's saying. So I just told you. Then he goes to explain it. Yeah. Dehina Yedua. Yeah. That's. So v'eidzes is coming after he said that the good divine gets revealed in this world. So you could say those divine levels of atzilus. The divine Shalom Elokim. So now he goes that through the 10 spheres we know the divine, the infinite divine, that's higher than atzilus, and that's machshavas and alomas. Machshavas and alomas means hidden thoughts, not the chesed that's concealed in the energy that in atzilus that the container reveals, like I mentioned with Shmaya Vavtaya. But it's revealing hidden thoughts. The story is telling us more than just. In other words, you could have like this. You can tell a story to your child, or to your student, or your friend. You tell the story of your life. But you could tell them, on a certain level, I'll reveal to you what, a certain aspect. Does the story reveal your innermost dreams and passions? And so, not necessarily a story. It can just be of one episode of your life, that 5 years ago something like this and this happened. That would be atzilus telling the story of itself to the world. So the kelim are revealing to the world that. But you say machshavas nalamas, you're saying it's telling us a story about God that's beyond atzilus. That's the point. It's revealing to us also the levels of Sefirot hagnuzis. That's the bottom line. And we'll soon learn even more than that too. What means machshavas nalamas? So he says that the power of atzilus that is concealed and sealed, or closed, comes in Erein Sof HaMaitzil, in the divine infinite light of the emanator, Vehena Sefirot hagnuzis b'Maitzila, which is the whole discussion that we had all the chapters. It's revealing to us also its source, its concealed source in the 10 hidden spheres. Now, if you remember, you go back to Mareches, which goes back all the way. Where is that? Yeah. So he uses that lotion, kamas v'chosim rather, is right here. Is I believe right here, the beginning of chapter 8, page 12. So he says, the Mareches writes, Mareches is a Makubal, great Kabbalist. The Inyan Atzil Shalein is Chalish Dover Maiz. When this action is Galach Koyach Hakomas v'Chosim Mekoyach Halapel. So it reveals the concealed. What is this? So it's very similar to the word Machshava Nalamas. Remember, the Rebbe Rashab is being medayik, precision in the words of the Rabbi Shem Tov and the Pardes. So what's Machshavas Nalamas? Is talking about the root. So it's not, in the example I gave with Shammai and Hillel, they're not just revealing what Shmaya Vavtayan taught them, they're going to where Shmaya Vavtayan got the idea. All the way in the source, where it's concealed. That's the 10 hidden spheres. Remember, after you explained the 10 spheres, and he said they're also in energy, this also, you see clearly why he's connecting that constantly there's energy in spheres. Because here's another reason, not just achdus. If there was no spheres in energy, you can never get to the concealed. You'll only get as far as containers can go. Being that chesed and gvura is also an air, the air leads you into its source in the air before the tzimtzum. So you have machshavas nalamas. So that's another aspect to it. So basically, if you recall, then he went through a whole discussion that the spheres, the energy in the spheres, right? Exactly. Container would be like, okay, the container goes to dead end. Exactly. It doesn't lead you into the world of air. The story, in other words, yeah, that Metziyaris comes from the Sefirot hagnuzis. That's right. Yeah, like he said, the Sefirot hagnuzis is a source also for the energy. So that's what he says. So what happens is that it's revealing also the hidden thoughts, which is all the way the 10 hidden spheres. If you recall, that was basically, I would say, 20 chapters, maybe or less, discussion at length where the energies of atzilus are rooted, and that's why it's a gili hahelam. So it's a gili hahelam. Remember, the infinite divine, the artist who had many possibilities, Shir Atzmei chose one possibility. That's the 10 spheres. That possibility is Eir. It's all in Eir HaBligvul. He was Meshayir. He envisioned something that's structure. And then there's another aspect called containers that contain it, as we learned. The Ano Emlech that he said in the previous chapters, where it's like the garment. Yeah, the second track, which is like the Rishimu and the Kem. The structure itself. But the energy, this also means all the way in the root there's a tailored connection to the two, between the two. You want to ask something?
Yeah, so what is he revealing? I mean, you don't understand much of the atzilus or the earliest in the containers, you don't understand. So now he's revealing something that you remind of it, or whatever you want to know, that's not a right.
So good question. When we learned it, I discussed it at length. There's a whole chapter just on this question, what you're saying now. What the Sefirot hagnuzis are. So really this requires going back to the 10-15 chapters that Rebbe Rashab explained that what you're saying now.
In a nutshell?
In a nutshell, 15 chapters? That's very hard for me to do.
No, just on the
You're not going to get the Nekuda unless you learn it. I could tell you the Nekuda. After you learn it, I could put it to you in a nutshell. If I say in a nutshell, if you learned it, you'll get it. If not, you're not going to get it. You want to know what it is? It's understanding how structure is beyond structure. That's the nutshell. You understand what I just said?
Yeah.
Okay, so then...
I understand one thing. There is and there isn't.
Fine. Yeah. We live in a world where everything is tangible and concrete. In atzilus, we learn that it's aligned with its source. So everything is doing exactly the way it should do. In Sefirot, you learn that the structure is really beyond structure. And it's all how God sees it, let's put it that way.
Yeah, so in other words, it's for the not here and here. Is that what it means?
If you like those words, that's fine. If you understand what you just said.
I don't understand.
But yeah.
So where does it come together here?
Through our Veda. Without a Veda, you're not going to get it together. This requires work. Because we live in a very tangible world. You know what comes together? Where a person can go into their bank and take out $1 million and write a check to the Rebbe. That's where it comes together. You could do that, you know that you're talking business. Then you're combining a tangible world of selfishness with something beyond. Okay. You know many people that do that? So that's why it's not so simple. I know. That's I use specifically example with money because that's because I'm dedicating my nefesh habamis, my nefesh halakis, my soul. You want something tangible? It comes to something in this world that you worship, and you're ready to give it to God. Then you're talking about a uniting structure and beyond structure. Is that too much?
No, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So every time it's basically what you're saying is it's not like a one thing. It's an ongoing process of uniting. But every time you do something with the that you call a Veda, whatever it is.
Every mitzvah. When you sit, to put it in more subtle terms, when you're hungry and you sit down to eat a meal, you can just indulge and just fresh and say it's all for me, or you look at it like a korban. Not to say pashut. To wash your hands, make a bracha. People who really prepared for eating meal. Eating meal was a big thing. It was like they eat with awe. It's a bracha of neighborship. Not just a meal. It's a sensitivity. But on a simple level, it means you take a gashmizdika thing. You say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. What are you saying? You're being mamshich bracha melashon hamshacha. You're being mamshich ameitzi lechem min haaretz. It's not just bread. It's bread that God just gave you. Rabbi Yanai Saba, as Zayah says, he sat with a meal in front of him. He would pray that he should have food. He saw food. So this says no, because the food is a gift from his neighbor. What do you mean? You think it's yours? So he prayed while he saw the meal. It's like hamayim b'chei elomim b'zeireya. It says hayimonu sitecha. The Gemara says the shishas darim is hinted in that pasuk. So what's amunah? There's amunah is zroim, itecha is zmanim, etc. Moyed. So why is amunah is zroim? The Gemara says in Tosfos, what's amunah? When you're planting something, there's no amunah. That's nature. You plant the seeds. It's because he's ma'imim b'chei elomim b'zeireya. He believes in God and he plants. It's a contradiction. You could believe in God when you don't have a natural process, because there's no such thing as a natural process. The Alter Rebbe says that nature is just a word we use when we don't understand something. It says in Tanya. That's natural. Nature did it. Even the insurance company call it acts of God. You know why? Because they have to pay them. So when it comes to money, mitamol, there's a God is all right. When you have to give him credit, no. But who did the hurricane? It's acts of God. What do you want from me? They don't say acts of nature. They call it acts of God. I find it hilarious. Anything to say about Pardola. God, yeah, fine, God. Church and state, who cares? God. It's God. God did it all. Anyway, I'm giving you just an example. It's a good question. I told you it's a good question. It's hard to sum up the whole thing. Because the truth is, you're right. I said this many times here. It's hard for us to even figure out Asiyah Ruchnis. Forget about atzilus and Sefirah Sagnuzis. But for the record, let's just say this: the story that when a person who really is telling a story to you about their life, what are you hearing from them? So some people will just hear the story, a Holocaust story from Russia, a Mesirus Nefesh story, whatever. But someone if it's coming from the right source and the person who's listening knows how to hear, he's going to hear a lot more than just the story. He's going to hear the Mesiris Nefesh of Eden. He's going to hear generations, So that's what he's basically saying, that the story of atzilus tells us much more than atzilus. It tells us about the Eibishter a lot more than what we see. So it's all about really how deep you go. It's true, it depends on the individual. But if you want to understand this well, that's what it comes down to. You can hear, two people can hear the same story, and one person heard the technical story and the very moving story, another person hears, oh wow, this must mean chveis vos. And the person who's educated and knows, let's say, some chassidus will understand a chassidish story a lot different than someone who just hears it as a nice fairy tale or a nice tale. So that's essentially what he's saying here. But the level of it, we'll discuss it more. Let's see how he explains it here. And I'm just telling you, if you really want to know, and I'll be lazy, go back to the chapters where he starts Sefirot. This is basically 18. Let's see where exactly. I think it begins the 15. Chapter 15 begins Sefirot. Yeah. Around 10 chapters there. He speaks about the whole thing, how it's in the root. Think of it this way, Rabbi Yisrael, okay? When you see a human being functioning, yourself or myself, let's see, what's the story of life? Let's talk like that. Let's keep it. So you see a human being, you see he has eyes and ears. You see I have eyes and ears. You know that you can see with your eyes, so probably I can see with my eyes. You don't know that as a fact. You know that since you speak intelligent, I speak intelligent, we have a communication, so we have feelings, and we're able to relate to each other. The question is, how deep can you go? Whether it's with a friend or even with yourself, how deep can you go inside? So there's conscious things that you're aware of. I know what I'm feeling today, I know what I like, I know what I believe in, Iskashus, the Rebbe is important to me. My children, my family. You can go to a certain depth, but you also know there's levels that you can't see. You don't remember all your memories when you were a child, for example, that maybe shape how you behave today. There may be things that happen that you don't really remember. There's stories we remember when we were children, stories you don't remember. How many things happened to us before our memories, when we were 2 years old, 1 year old? There was a whole life going on. So, but it's there. Now, a person who really understands the story can see even that which...
That's my question.
You tell me. Come on, you tell me. You have children? You saw them when they were 1, 2?
No, of course it's there. The stories are there, but who said...
No, I'm saying they experience things with you, right?
Yeah.
So they're never going to remember it consciously. But so what happened to it? It just disappeared?
Maybe disappears. No,
You're playing devil's advocate again?
I know studies have shown that it impacts their life.
You don't even need studies. To me, it's so simple. It's obvious. Let's say something happened to you last night in a dream and you don't remember. And today, for some reason, you're scared.
Yeah.
Is it a big stretch to imagine that maybe something I dreamt yesterday that's making me scared today, even though you don't remember? There's no such thing in this world that every effect has a cause.
So a person's behaving in a certain way.
Yeah. In other words, if a child at 1 year old, with studies for sure you see it. God forbid, was a fire in the house, they're not going to remember the fire, but they're going to have a reaction because they pick up from the parents that it was a very scary event. So the only thing that remains with them is the impact, And to me, it's obvious because when you think of it like this, let's put it this way: you put a seed in the ground, and you make a little scratch in it. The Rebbe gives the example: when it becomes a tree, that scratch is going to be. It doesn't forget. So when a human being experiences something, it's etched in you. Nothing disappears. Now, obviously, every breakfast and lunch and dinner that a child had when they were 1 year old, just like now, doesn't have major impact. But things that do have impact, even now we have things that don't impact us. You walk through the street, not everything impacts you. From a Torah point of view, you learn the whole Torah, and it definitely has an impact. The reason we have, let's say, a conscience, that we sense right and wrong. Why are we touched by a song, even though we never heard the song? Children in a mother's womb, they have today tests. They play music, the child moves. How does it know that? Speech, you could say it learns. You hear its parents speak, so you learn to speak. It's also a miracle. To learn in 2 years to speak a whole language is not another story. Really, the truth is only learning from your parents, not speech. You're learning your parents what language. But the ideas are inside of a person. I mean, basically, let's put it this way: the brain that we have, and we're 20, 30, 40, we were born with it. We didn't buy it when we became bar mitzvah. It wasn't like planted. It just developed. So development means that things are that's the progress of how life works. I mean, I can go on and on. The point is, God created, what you're asking, actually, I will answer the way he said earlier. He created it. If the Eibishter wanted, he could have just put everything here. We're born 20, 30, we're born Ben Esnim, like Adam and Chava, and get start your life. But he made things with a process, because he wanted us to connect. And to connect, you have to have a process. There's no way a teacher and a student, like he said, there's no helam if there's no islapshus. If we don't have a relationship, you're you, I'm me, it's like a stone and a tree. They don't talk to each other. There's no relationship between them. I'm not talking now the natural, nature, everything balances, everything feeds each other. But as far as a relationship, what we understand as a relationship is not a given. The Eibishter made it that way because he wanted a process. You grow. That's how you grow. And that's how you connect between us and the Eibishter. And also, as children, one of the reasons we're not born adults is because you want it to be a process where you learned. If you just popped into adult, you would not have earned it. You wouldn't learn through experience. It would be like giving someone experience without them having experience. It's a nice gift, but it wouldn't be real. The Rebbe asked this when he turned 70, Tov Ayin Beis, Nasa Hashivim. The Rebbe said, when they told the Rebbe that he should retire, the Rebbe said, Adam Lom Yaval, it was the whole techen of the Fabrengen. A person is created to achieve. So the Rebbe said, why? So he said, you see nature, Nema Dechsufa, that when a person gets something free, it's a busha, it's a shame, bread of shame. Adam Reitze B'kav Shaleh, a person has more pleasure from $1, one measure of their own, than 9. So the Rebbe said, that's right. So the Rebbe then asked the Kasha, made it the Kasha. Hagufa Kasha. The Eibishter, his Chazdei Hagadol, could have made it nice, that we don't have to work and we should also have pleasure. Why did he make the nature of a human being that he's embarrassed when he gets a gift? Or he has more appreciation when why not give it to him? Give him 9 kavim, and he should be reitz, and he should have pleasure in it. The Rebbe's answer was a Meidic answer. His answer was because Eibishter wanted us to be like a creator, a beira. If that would be the case, we would always be a makabel. He wanted us to create. So he put pleasure in creating, not pleasure in receiving. That's what the Rebbe's answer was. It's printed, the letter of Lamed Beis in Tosha and Yudalf Nissen and the Sichas. It's an unbelievable answer. In other words, he wanted us to be like him. He says, Mahu beir elmas, afata beir elmas. Mahu beir elmas, afavicham beir elmas. By Yaakov. So he wanted us to be creative, to be mashpiyim. And to be mashpiyah, obviously you can ask the question, let him make you feel like a mashpiyah, not be a mashpiyah. But that's of course ridiculous. You're not. If someone says, listen, you can behave like you're acting like a mashpiyah, but you're really not. So you have to earn it. And that earning is what makes you create it, and that's where you have the deeper pleasure. My point is, when I'm going back to this, there's a process. And the growth of a child into an adult is a process that is a healthy thing. And it also, in Aveda, it's the process of growing and earning your way and owning, making it primizdik. Like we keep learning. Anything that's makiv is not yours. Maybe a higher gili, higher revelation. The goal is that it should become internalized. So bottom line is, what I'm saying is that when you look at a person, there's a deeper story than just what you see. That's machshavas. That's like eshes firas hagnuzas abisl. El derech. It's not exactly, but it's like the keiches hanefesh in the nefesh. What does your seichel look like in the nefesh? You can't figure it out, but you know something is there, and you know it's far edler and more refined than what you see. Just like you know that when you look at an object, it's not the object, it's the energy inside the object that makes it powerful. Our goal is obviously to combine the two. That the container should reflect the energy. That the outer should tell us the story of the inner, basically. Then you have a reality. We, on the other hand, live in a world of echad b'peh, echad b'lev. Not only are people not telling stories, they're telling baba maises. Which means not only is it not revealing, it's actually distorting and concealing. So that's the opposite. That's like, So first step is tell the story. Tell people, shalavicha v'yagetcha, sipur, agod. You tell your story. And then there's a deeper story. I mean, in many ways, when we think about Jewish history, we hear what we heard from our parents. On Pesach, we sit and we tell the story. We're always looking for deeper messages in the story. Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's not just the Eden went out of Mitzrayim, we read Haggadah. Every time you're looking for more depth. What's behind the scenes? We're now behind the scenes. We're going behind the scenes here. That's not lamas. One second. I'm reading the previous chapter. So that's revealing hagnuzis. So you see the words nalamis, hagnuzis, komos, v'chosum. All the same thing. We're now revealing the hidden. Because Pasha, someone could argue, Rabbi R Shem Tov, machshavas nalamis, maybe that means it's atzilus. No, but he's saying that's not enough. You have to say it's more than that.
So the Rosh just gave him, so we were trying to reveal the subconscious in the person, right?
Yeah.
And then what?
And then atzmus itself.
Well, then when we reveal it, what happens?
Well, in a personal relationship, it makes the relationship deeper. If you and I are friends, and we're not just friends, we do business together and we say hello, but we connect. So number one,
you get to a certain depth, but beyond that depth, it's very difficult, right?
No, it's hard to find atheists. But that's the goal. That the 10 spheres of atzilus should reveal to us the hidden dimensions of God, not just the revealed dimensions. But it's still the hidden of Mamala Kalam, and we're not even getting to Sefer. Soon we're getting to Sefer Kalam. Yeah, it's the root of Mamala Kalam. It's the root of Eretz Hagvulim.
But it's before the Tzimtzum.
So you don't remember that, but that's where it's rooted. Shirat Mekeh. The root of Eretz Spheres Hagnuzis is the root of Eretz Habligvul, which is the infinite spheres, or the infinite possibilities. The purpose of it all is ultimately the unity with the divine. Ach Masha Sfiris Tatsilis Megalas Hamachshavas and Lamas Hainu Esesfiris Hagnuzis Commission Bamshachalis Bechinis Mekelim. One second. So that's so and okay, it's a comes a course, so it's a matzila. Ach, Masha, what's the ach? He just said that. Ach, Masha Sfiris, atzilus megalas, amachshavas and lamas, hainu eses Sfiris hagnuzis. Maybe. So let me just see. Machshavas and lamas. Okay, atzilus comes a course, but hainu eses Sfiris hagnuzis b'matzila. Good. Okay, maybe. Ach. However, what it reveals, the concealed. Masha Sfiris atzilus megalas, amachshavas and lamas. What the spheres of atzilus reveal, the hidden thoughts. Hainu eses Sfiris hagnuzis k'mashein b'hamshacha. This means the 10 hidden spheres, the way they're already being in transmission, they're already in transit. Liyaz b'chinas mekerim al kapanim leses Sfiris hagnuzis. That they should be at least sources for the 10 revealed spheres. In other words, not eses Sfiris hagnuzis the way they are in their place, the way they're already beginning to flow. We learned the 3 levels. That's Sfiris hagnuzis, the kav, and then the. So which is this? Does he mean the kav? Okay, let's see where he goes. He's going to explain it. V'gam behem v'yodam yesh giluyim ha'eres atzmim. Here again says behem v'yodam, the lay and bay. V'gam, and also in them, and through them, there's also revelations from the essential energies, the eses Sfiris hagnuzis, meaning before they're transmitted. He never said this exact expression that there's a level of Sfiris hagnuzis the way they're hamshacha, the way they are be'etzem. But the second level was the kav. That's already not Sfiris hagnuzis. He's saying in Sfiris hagnuzis there's 2 things: the way they are so-called be'etzem, the way they are. It's fine. I'm just pointing out.
Maybe like it's Malchus Ein Sefer. Isn't that the level of Malchus Ein Sefer? Malchus has 2 nekudas.
Maybe.
It becomes a market.
Maybe that's what he's saying. Possible. Yeah. You have something on the tip of your tongue? You want to say something? Oh, okay. Now he's going to give a mashal to understand this. V'yuvan zel derech mashal b'nefesh ha'adam. This is Meididika stuff. Because it's all about understanding the deeper story. Okay. We'll understand this example, b'nefesh ha'adam, the soul of a person, sheyesh b'keiches atzma, maklulim b'nefesh. Oh, it's Mama's example I was giving you. Baruch shekivanti. But it didn't come from me. I learned it earlier. That's the thing. Okay. We see there's keiches atzma klum b'nefesh. We learned this at length earlier. That since you say there's keiches gluyim, since you see these faculties as they're functioning, you have to say that the soul has them, because the body doesn't have them. You see, after death, the body is just a body. The body is an empty container. So when you see a life force inside of us, and the life causes us to have machshavas and seichel, chabad, and we have chagas, midas, and we have other keiches. You have to say that the nefesh. Now, if we would put a nefesh on this table here, I'm just saying hypothetically, you wouldn't see anything. It'd be an energy, it'd be like electricity. I'm just giving an example. You wouldn't see in this electricity, like you don't see in Shmai Vavtayan or in the root, all the manifestations of something. It's more like we spoke the example of a projector of light, and there's no film. So you see white light. But the white light has in it, when you make a prism, like a rainbow, it makes colors. Where did the colors come from? They weren't created. No one painted the light. The light has colors, but you don't see colors. When you bend light, when you see right now colors, by the way, is because the light has colors. Why is this red and this is this? Because the way it reflects, white light reflects on this, it bends it to look like this. Yeah. What do you think? Why do you see red? Why is this not white? And why is this?
It's painted red.
Yeah, but why do you see red? What happens when you paint it red? Why is your eye seeing a different color?
It's not going to do that color, right?
Right? No, the question is if it's a tzeva atzmi, it can be just painted that this is not really red, you can scrape it off. But right now, it's with the color red, the paint color, the dye called red, is a reflection of light that reflects only that aspect of light. It's a whole discussion. This is called a prism. So if you shined light regular, it would be white. If you put it through a prism is like a glass that has like different angles. You see it's like a kaleidoscope. What happens is it bends the light, so suddenly you see colors. A rainbow is exactly that. The sun shining through clouds. The cloud is bending. It doesn't mean bending in a physical, be bent like this. But it's altering the light's flow. So like sound. Sound is a good example. I speak now, but if I put a funnel here or a muzzle, you hear the sound. But how would you hear it? Like you hear it distorted. So the same light also can have something like filters that make it, but it's still the sound. It's just you can't hear it clearly, or you hear different frequencies. I know you have in Gashmi so much abstraction that you can't imagine. Everything that we experience, we just take for granted.
But you understand it better than they understood it 100 years ago.
Even the shita. How do you see something? Why is it that what is your eye doing that sees an object? So there's 3 shittas in Chassidus brings, from, and even scientists, it's not so simple. What is the eye doing? I mean, we take it for granted, but what's exactly happening? Is the eye sending out a signal and bringing back the object? Is the object reflecting and you're seeing the reflection? Because you're definitely not there. You're seeing something. This is long discussions on this. This is not simple matters. The understanding of how it works. We are all these are great examples to show you how Elokus is ganzen beyond. You know what Reuven didn't say to that atheist? He was verbringing. And the guy started making fun. He says, "What's God? Who God? Where's God?" I don't want to even say it on camera, but I'll say it. So he was very bluntly. So he said to him, he says, I think the guy worked on a farm with him or something. Maybe he knew him from a kibbutz. So he said to me, "Tell me, do you know why these type of goats, when they release certain waste, it comes out like long, and these goats, it comes out round?" He says, "No." He says, "אתה לא מבין בקקה של חיה, אתה תדבר איתי על אלוקים?" He got it right on the point. You can't even tell me the difference between, why this happens. That you're talking to me about God. The point I'm making, anyway. Yeah, good. So now he's giving the example. So, but etzem hanefesh, we know it through extrapolation. By the way, you asked me the question. I remember I told you the example of how a trained person, if you have, let's say, no one should ever have, people go to therapy. Most therapists are worthless, but some are good. And you have an issue, a personal issue, a family issue, whatever it may be. It could be the issue like, this classic joke where the guy comes to the psychiatrist and says, I can't sleep because I imagine there's demons, shadim under my bed. Okay, we've got to discuss it. So I start psychotherapy, months and months, and the guy's paying dollars, a lot of money. And they say, garnishment, God, nothing's changing. Still can't sleep 6 months, 7 months, 8. One day he meets his rabbi. Chassidish rabbi says to him, "What do you do with your life?" He says, "I can't sleep." He said, "What are you doing?" "Went to a psychiatrist." The rabbi gave him an eitzah. Alta batal geva. So he stopped going to the psychiatrist. He meets the psychiatrist a few months later and says, "What happened to you?" He says, "I solved all the problems and it didn't cost me anything." He said, "What?" "My rabbi told me what to do." He said, "What?" He said, "To cut off the legs of the bed." That's it. So the bed's on the ground. So there can't be any demons there. Sasak problem just solve. The psychiatrist would have kept him in psychotherapy for the next 500 years. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that when you talk to someone about an issue, so let's say a person says, I deal with this all the time. I counsel people, so I'm having a problem getting married. I'm having a problem with my mother, with my father, with my children. People have. Can't get along with, I have a lot of anger. So most cases people, if it's something that's affecting, I'm not talking about superficial things. It's usually something deeper. It could be they grew up in a home, very often you go through the usual suspects, you find someone grew up, God forbid, in a home, a divorce, or the father was alcoholic, there was anger, there was some abuse, sometimes serious, there's all kinds of things. You don't know, when you see a person sitting here, you don't know what you didn't live with him. He doesn't even know necessarily. So what do you do if you're really trained? You can't see, there's no ruach hakodesh here necessarily. So what you do is, you ask questions, and you discuss, and you start seeing how he reacts to this, how she reacts, and so on. It's like a doctor starts saying, you have pain? Okay, where's the pain? Here. Start feeling, then it gets, here, it hurts a lot. So there's something there. The more it hurts, but you can't see it, the doctor can't see it either. But a trained doctor will say, if it's hurting here, it's possible one of two things. My point is, there's ways that you directly observe things, there's ways you only observe through called extrapolation. By studying. I gave the example. Imagine an imaginary dark wall. No light is shining on it, and you can't touch it. But you want to know what it looks like. What kind of wall is it? What could you do? You can't go over and touch it, you can't shine a light on it. Yeah, you can throw a ball on it. You throw a ball. The ball bounces back straight, it's straight. It bounces back like this. You keep bouncing the ball enough times, it's called yediyas hashlila. Enough times, you can get an image of the wall, even though you never saw it. You speak to someone who has a problem, and you keep talking, you start seeing, like you say to them, how's your relationship with your mother? That's excellent, let's not even talk about it. And you start talking, the more they say, don't go there, the more that's exactly where you got to go. My point is that there's a way of understanding the unconscious, there's definitely forces behind the scenes. I'm just giving an example that we're going to Akeiches Atzma Maklin B'Nefesh, we know it's there, because we know that it comes out. It didn't come from nowhere. Where did Seichel come from? It didn't come from the body. It didn't come from your food that you ate. It didn't come from the air. So there's some force in you that's bringing it to you. Now, obviously, Chassidus and Torah tells us what God tells us about it. So God tells us where it comes from. But even if you were going on matlamat like a scientist, you'd also know it's coming from somewhere. So the best scientists will tell you is that the brain, once there's a soul, and they don't know how to explain a soul. That no one knows how to explain a soul. They just say it's some type of electrical energy. At best. I'm talking about people who don't even believe in anything. They all know it's a mystery. Something happens when an egg is fertilized, and let's say it generates electricity. This electricity gives life. But then, how do you explain intelligence? That the brain is like charges, but no one really understands how it works. They just know that it works, and they try to figure it out. But like the root of it, they won't say there's keiches atzma in the nefesh because they don't speak like that. But let's go on here. So keiches atzma klulin b'nefesh. The soul itself, this is literally, again, should be compared with chapters 2, 3, 4, where he discusses this. Because the soul itself, and here by soul, we're not talking about divine soul, animal soul, we're just talking about the life force. The life force itself, the nefesh itself, is pshuta legamri, it's completely shapeless. Like I said, it's like white light. You wouldn't be able to even see it. It's completely shapeless. It's not even in the category of faculties. It's not like the sum of the parts, where you have, like in a computer, here are the parts, this part, this part, this part. It's a state of energy, basically. Like it says in Tanya, chapter 51, that the soul is kula etzem echad, it's one essential core entity, ruchni, of spirit, sublime, pashat, seamless, shapeless, substanceless. And this a nefesh is even higher than yechida. When we say there are 5 names to neshama, 5 dimensions, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, yechida. that there's 5 names that it's called by. What is called? Who's called? If you say Shemish Hashem is Nikra Law, who's Law? Who's she? Who's this? Means there's a nefesh that's called by 5 names, including yechida. So it means even yechida doesn't really is a step below the etzem nefesh. V'hi b'pchinas peshitus legamri. So you can't even call it yechida. Which yechida, as we know, is yechida shebenefesh, the deepest part. It's completely peshitus, and yet it's the source for the faculties, for all our keiches. So it's completely shapeless, but it includes within it all the faculties. Like the keich, the power of intelligence, hayuli atzmi. Keich hayuli, we've discussed this, is a term. It's really almost like a. We haven't found the translation for hayuli. Hayuli is like an Aramaic word, and the Greek word actually. Also, hayuli means something that is like a potential state that has all the possibilities included in it. It's used very much with yehcida eish and so on. That's like a keich hayuli. It's archetype is one expression for it. It's an archetypal power. So if you look in it, you're not going to find what comes out of it. Like he said before, you say the Eish, you're not going to find fire in it. But it's the root of it. So basically, it's a word actually used more by the Mittler Rebbe than by the Alter Rebbe, and Tzemach Tzedek actually says that it brings in places where the sources for it. I think so. It's definitely from the Greek thinkers, like Aristotle and Plato. Plato spoke a lot about Hiyuli. But Hiyuli was like the 4 you say, there's like the 4 elements. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar are 4 archetypes. You know what an archetype is? An archetype is more like a model, 4 models of something, and from there, it's 4 concepts, if you want to put it that way. But it's not intellectual concepts. It's like 4 states of energy that each one will end up being a different category. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar, or whatever it may be. So he calls it Keich HaSeichel HaYuli Atzmi. It means that in the soul, there's a Seichel HaYuli Atzmi. There's something that is the root of the core root of the archetypal intelligence, collective unconscious. Some people call it the keich hachesed hayuli ha'atzmi, and the same thing with love. It has within it the power of a core power archetype of love. And from these core archetypes, so to speak, in the soul, from them nimtzoyim emerge, extend the revealed faculties. Now he goes into parentheses. How long is this parentheses? Okay, not so long. Now he's spelling it out. Keiches ha'atzmim is not the nefesh itself. That's already the keiches ha'atzmim in the nefesh. It's a step below. It's the essential core faculties the essential core faculties. That's the yechida, the highest 5th level in the soul. That's why it's called yechida, because the faculties on that core faculties are not any type of mitzias. There's not any type of substance, even though it's the source of it. There's no substance there at all. They're essentially fundamentally shapeless in their fundamental and core personality. And there's also no separation or distinction between them. They're all like bundled into one form of energy.
Let me just ask you, is that like every A that follows the other one? In other words,
every what? Aid?
Every level. Like the pashut, but that's only on this level. But,
you're talking about relative. Is it relative? Now he's not saying it's relative. Now he's saying it's actually pshutim mamish. He's not saying relative. There are, of course, there are levels. As it comes down, there's levels, and one is more relative to the lower level, more abstract. Yeah.
All of them are peshitus.
Yeah. And there's no ischalkus at this stage. Think of it, even though this is not a good example, a perfect example, but it's an example. A seed that will grow into an apple tree. The seed is this size. It's nothing, but it has everything in it. This apple tree is not going to get anything from anywhere else. The only thing you'll need is water, nourishment. But that seed will become the tree. In that seed, you have everything that will emerge later. But how is it there? You don't see. There's no branches. There's no apples. There's no leaves. There's no trunk. There's no roots. There's nothing. So it's an example of something. Here, obviously, it's even deeper because that's a physical seed at the end of the day. But it's an example. It's an example where you could have concentrated before it expresses itself many things. Same thing as like an artist begins to draw something. In the beginning, it's just a general picture. These are only examples. They're not perfect examples, but they're examples to see that there is a process of how things emerge. You know?
So that's what we're looking at, the process.
Yeah, so the yechida is the keches atzmim. What means there's no distinction? That means that they're not in any state of 10 faculties. And even though, yeah, the mashal, yeah, this exactly. That's why it's very much, because he said basically ideas like this earlier. But he's now bringing it into the story. Remember, this is, Rebbe Hashem knows that he said. He's now telling you, now this is the story. All that he was setting it up to tell you here the building blocks. Now he's telling you what the Sefirah is, the purpose. Basically, you can say the earlier chapters were, here are the pieces of the puzzle. Now we're telling you what they do. That's what they do, is they give you the number, they tell a story. Is where we are now. Right. It's actually very...
Before you explain the concepts of every...
Yeah, it's like telling you, it's like, you know, like when you buy a new equipment, they tell you there's 20 pieces here, one piece here, one piece this. Now you put it together, here's its function. We're now talking the functionality of it. Before it was the Shem I would say maybe the Shem HaTeir, now it's the Shem HaPu'ula. Yeah. Very, very organized. And it's systematic. Look, we're learning this. It's a journey. And even though this is called Keich HaChachma, this is Keich HaBina, we just said it's the source for Chachma Bina. We said Keich Yuli Atzmi, of Chachma Bina. They're a complete state of shapelessness. And it's called a helam, a concealment that's not existent yet. That's like it says elsewhere. Samach Vav, he explains the difference between helam she'ein b'mitzias, helam she'yeshna b'mitzias. I'll give you the example he gives. The difference between a coal, a hot coal, and a flintstone. Both of them produce fire. The coal, however, a hot coal, you don't see the fire. It's concealed. You may even think that it's not burning. You touch it, it's even hotter. It's white. You blow on it, you fan it, it becomes a flame. A flintstone, you definitely don't see flame in it. You touch it, it's not hot. You even try to light a flame from it, nothing will happen. You have to strike it. So he says that's an example. So Eish in the flintstone is a helam she'ein b'mitzias. It's concealed, but not only is it concealed, it's not even fire yet. The source of fire. In a coal, it's concealed, but it's a mitzias. It's helam she'yeshna b'mitzias. I mean, it's an excellent example. So you have to say the same thing with our faculties. There's the faculties as they're revealed. There's the faculties as they're concealed, but you just have to fan them. That would be like that chassid that told Alter Rebbe, he doesn't learn, but he can learn. So he said, Pung ve'aganaf, a thief is not someone who could steal, but someone who steals. A lamdan is not someone who could learn, but someone who learns.
That's the keches in alam.
Yeah, nalam, not atzmim. That's like helam sheyesh mitzias. Means you have the potential, you're just not using it. You know, so you need a little. Then there's a helam she'ein b'mitzias, which means in the keches atzmim there's a power, but there yehcida and kabbalah sale, as it explains in Samach Vav, the two things. That's why you have someone who harav is like striking a flintstone, a brechtzich, and he could reveal sometimes powers that a smart person who's born with smart and has the potential in the lamim, but it doesn't. So atzmim is a whole different level. So even on a psychological level, it's two different things. Some people have the ability to just not, but the majish, right? That you can and can't, the wills, that's it. And then other people have the atzmim. When the Rebbe was asked by Ishka Gansberg in the letter, Tavshin Yud, to be the Rebbe, and he wrote to him, so the Rebbe wrote to him, Rebbe, Avdem Daf Menahim, Keches Gluyim, V'Keches Melamim, V'Keches Atzmim, V'Keches Heyulim. He wrote all this. You know, B'Shleimus and Aladi Madreges. And Machshava Dibra Maisa. So Meklal Lava to Shemei Hein, that when the Rebbe became Rebbe, means that he had. So the bottom line is, there are all these levels. Briefly, there are Keches Gluyim, Keches Melamim, Keches Atzmim. He's saying, yechida is atzmim. It's not even the nefesh yet. So that's how they are. Helam she'ein b'mitzias, like the Flintstone type of thing.
That's the flintstone.
That's yechida. That's my example. He says Helam she'ein b'mitzias. I'm giving you the example from elsewhere where it says that. He says it's yechida in the parentheses here. Yeah, that's what he says. Oh, 1 second. Actually, Surah Chalamish is a coal.
No, you're right. Flintstone.
Surah Chalamish is a Flintstone? 1 second. You're right. Ayin Beis. I'm sorry. Sur, a stone. A Chalamish, yeah. Oh, he does give this example. Like the power of fire in Sur, in a stone that, in a Flintstone. Chalamish is a fiery stone. Huh? Yeah. And in general, the level of the general level of yechida is similar to chemer hiyuli. Chemer hiyuli means a raw object without shape, without form. It's like think a piece of clay, like a seed. It's just a seed. It's just the raw item. Chemer, a raw matter. Shekil ba'atzmei shorshi hadal yehcida. It says in the Sefirot about when it talks about the archetypes of the 4 elements. So it says there's 4 yehcidas: Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afer, fire, wind, water, and earth. But there's a chemer hayuli that's before the 4. Before these 4 were shaped, they were all one bottom of clay. It's similar, like it says about the Shamayim is Eish and Mayim. Or Bereshis Bara, God created it all like in a seed in the nucleus, and then revealed each piece. Or like the seed I mentioned. So that's the root of the Dal. It says ve'ein beishum tzura, and it does not have any tzura, any shape. Rak osid lahalbish tzura. Only that in the future it will manifest. It will lahalbish tzura. It will enclose a shape. Ve'nikra tehu. That's called tehu.
That's the atzmim, and that's the.
He's still saying it's yechida and it's atzmim.
No, it's not a nefesh.
Right. There's all the parentheses. Yeah. So that's called tehu. The world of Tohu. It doesn't even say Tohu, the world of Tohu actually. It means Tohu meaning pustum vist. It's chaotic. It's a potential state. It's a nucleus. It's a, what's the word I used in the past? Not porous, what do we say? Nuclear Tohu. Yeah. Like it says in Eitz Chaim, talks about this, and there it says it's the level of arich, which some would say is really chaya, not yechida. Huh? Nebulous, right? Nebulous, like a nebula. Yeah. By the way, this is so exciting discussion in scientific language today because they're all looking for the Big Bang. They're all looking to see what was it like when it was all concentrated, and then a bang, some explosion made it all. The gases go. They want to see the seed. They all want to go. That's what they're looking for. The origin not in the source that made the seed. The seed.
The matter of it.
Right. And so it says there it's arich, which actually in Sefirah atik is yechida, arich is chaya, and the keches premium from Chabad Chagas Nehim is nefesh ruach neshama. So he's just qualifying that. Okay, that's the parenthesis. So that's more specifically that's yechida is the keches atzmim. Umuven da keches atzmim hem hagam shemehem nimtzoyim kol hakeches. So it's understood that the core faculties, even though from them emerge, nimtzoyim, come out, emerge all the faculties, nevertheless, einam begeder makir hakeches. They're not in the category of calling them a source, like you said before with the flintstone. You can't call them a makir. A makir would mean something that's close, has a relationship with. Like you said, they're completely peshitus, right? The chol makir behechashu b'chinas mitzias davar, because every source, every cause or source, you must say is some type of mitzias davar, some substance. Mashanasa makir that made it to become a makir, it became a source for something. V'gamhu b'chinas hamshachal is makir l'davar. So both it's some type of substance that defines it as being a source or a cause, and also it's already a form of transmission to be a source for this thing. He doesn't give an example, but I mean we can give examples. Like for example, go back to the coal. The coal is the source of the fire. A pilot flame is a source for a flame. Yes, it's only a pilot. You have to fan it. You have to extend it. But you have it. It's already substance and it's already flowing. It's already in that direction. If you say the root of this fire, where does it come from? And it's not even in a state of substance, and it definitely hasn't begun the flow. It's just keiches atzmim. It's like as I said, a nebulous form of energy. Be the best way to visualize it. The keiches atzmim hari eino b'chinas mitzias keiches klal. And the core faculties are not in any form, or not yet substantial faculties at all. The chol dover hakol be'etzem hari kumoya etzem. Because everything that's encompassed in the source, you see the mashal, every detail of the mashal is relative to the nimshal. Because everything that is included in the etzem, in the source, that's called keiches atzmim. So yechida is keiches atzmim, but it's included in the etzem of the neshama. So it's a step below, but it's included, therefore it's like the etzem. And just like the core of the soul is not a thing of substance, the same thing, there's the faculties within it are not of any substance. And then not only are they not substance, also the second thing he just said. He said a mokir has substance and also is the beginning of a transmission. And it's also not in a state of transmission at all, because they are core faculties. And the etzem, the rule is, something that's a core does not transmit. It's core, it remains there. It can be the source of a transmission, but it itself is an etzem. Etzem ein mispashet, etzem ein nimshach, and so on. It does not transmit. Ratzulemer, one second, parentheses. Look at before the Rotzein Lemer. Let me just say this. So basically, etzem hanefesh is the etzem hanefesh. Keiches atzmim is yechida. Is essentially the way he's saying. But bottom line is, we're not talking even the level of a source. It's there, but it's only as a it's like a root, archetypal root of something.
What's that? No, that's the nefesh or the yechida?
Both nefesh for sure, but the yechida, keiches atzmim. That's what the nefesh is just called the nefesh. Then nefesh has 5 names. The highest name yechida is the keiches atzmim. That's. Say that, yeah.
They're still not.
Yeah, but he said, but they're not. The makir would be already a helam sheyeshna b'mitzvahs, something that has some substance and is beginning to flow. See, here he's saying not only does it have no substance, it also does not even hasn't begun to extend. Even it doesn't extend itself. You know, the best example, if you want to really relate it personally, is as much as you will ever communicate to somebody, your etzem always remains your etzem. It's almost impossible to communicate an etzem. You can communicate your interests, you can talk about your deepest feelings, but an etzem is ultimately your own lonely domain. That etzem is a separate or apart. You know, obviously with the power of the Eibishter, we can megala an etzem also. That's the ultimate kavanah. But for practical purposes, right now, that's what he's saying. B'tzein lemer. What means etzem ein nimshach? B'bchinas hamshach v'spashtus. He's qualifying. What means etzem ein nimshach? He means not that it doesn't at all transmit. It means hamshach v'spashtus in a transmission that extends itself. Ki'im b'bchinas hamshach atzmis. It does transmit in hamshach atzmis. Let's see how he explains this. In other words, there's 2 types of hamshacha. Hamshacha, let's say, when the flame of a pilot flame or a coal, you fan it, and then suddenly it becomes a big flame. You know the source. It started with a small flame. So the hamshacha is one of extension. It just extended. When you get a spark out of a flintstone, you can't call it an extension of the stone. It's in there concealed, completely concealed, core level. But there is a hamshacha. Something comes out of it. So he's explaining the difference. In other words, when a person has hamshacha atzmis, like they say by the wedding of a child, that your etzem is revealed, it's not revealed in an organized way. Okay, it's revealed, and now step by step by step. It's hamshacha atzmi. It's a core type of personality. You can't call it in the category of a source. And elsewhere it's explained that in its transmission, even though it's the essence that's transmitting, and it's not yet, you can't call it the category of a source. Nevertheless, you can call it an interface, a state of an interface or an intermediary. And this is the higher state of the mamutza. Remember, every interface has two states, one that's closer to the source, one that's closer to the recipient. So this is the higher level of the mamutza that's muvdal ba'erech, that is completely separate. Let me explain what he's saying here. I'm not sure if he's talking about the keches atzmin or that's manefesh. Oh, yeah, you're right. So let's read the next parentheses, one parenthesis after the next. And even though they're the faculties of the soul, not the essence of the soul, we can say that which they are faculties of the soul is not that they are extending and revealing from the soul and became faculties, rather that they're found together with the soul. Then when you have a soul, you have with it faculties. And therefore, even though they're faculties, they're atzmim. Okay, this needs some explanation. Both parentheses. I mean, we have to do it by process of elimination through the negative. The things we relate to in this world, everything has a source, and that source extends. And as I said, you can identify the relationship. You can say the source is already the beginning of the flame that's going to burn, the big flame, has substance and has begun to flow. The root of flame, you say the Eish, let's say Hayuli, is just an archetype. You can't identify it as a substance, and it hasn't begun to flow at all. As we learned earlier, you said the H, without a wick, the flame won't even, will not catch. Okay. Nevertheless, it's not just an etzem that's isolated and just stays completely apart. There is a hamshacha. She's saying this type of hamshacha, we'd say hamshacha would be its expression is an expression that's not in the form of a source. It's an expression that is, there's a soul has entered your body, let's say. You were born, created, your soul entered your body. This soul has keches atzmim. It's there, but you can't call it yet a source because it's not like beginning to flow. There's nothing there yet. Think of the fetus, this first second of conception. Would you call it, there's intelligence in there? No. A child, you can say, maybe a newborn not, but 3 years old, you don't see yet the full-blown intelligence, but you see a mind that's working. It's starting to grow, it's starting to be educated. You can't even educate a fetus, let alone a seed. But it's all there. It's all there in the seed. It's there. Again, it's an example. It's not a perfect example because it's a God physical thing, but so you can't even call it more makkah. So really, there's like 3 levels we've been discussing. It's revealed, it's concealed, but relative to revealed, meaning it's the beginning of the revelation, just concealed at this point. Then it's fundamentally in its own reality, but it's still there because without that first step, you wouldn't have the other 2 steps. So you can't say there's no hamshach. It's not like a source. Then he says that it's the second thing in the parentheses. Then some place elsewhere it says it's like the mamutza. The etzem soul is there. The keches atzmim are like a mamutza. Their core faculties are like an interface, but they're an interface that's reflective of the source. As opposed, keches nalamim is the interface that's reflective of the revealed. So really, you have 4 levels. You have the etzem, you have the keches atzmim, core faculties. You have the hidden faculties, and you have the revealed faculties. So the middle 2 is a interface. This is the soul's core is expressed in the core faculties, but that's not a source yet. And then, and the keches atzmim then turn into keches nalamim, which now we have a source. It would be like the flintstone has been lit, and now it's created a coal, and the coal is still, and you fan the coal, you get gluyim, you get the revealed. So it's the lower. So what is the keches atzmim? The higher level of the mamutza. That's what he's saying. It's the higher level of the interface.
That interface is yechida.
Yeah, that part of the interface. Yechida chaya of the interface. Yeah, and nefesh ruach neshama is the gluyim, and the etzem and neshama is on this side. Okay. So you have now he adds in this parentheses, but they're faculties. So how could you call them now source? So he's explaining an interesting explanation. He's saying it's not the etzem hanefesh has faculties. He's saying wherever there's an etzem, it comes with power. It's like a form of, it's like a light, it's like an energy field. An energy field that contains everything in it. God planted into this energy field faculties. So it's not like it has faculties. He says like this. It's not like the essence has faculties. When you have a nefesh, automatically you have this power. In other words, it's much more. It's not faculties in the soul. It's the soul that neisha keches is the expression sometimes. It just contains. It carries it.
It's comprised of it?
No, you can't say comprised. Comprised would be no. Comprised means when something's made up of it. It's not made up of it. Not at all. No, absolutely not. For sure not.
Will it be like the flintstone that has a fire?
No, that's already the keches atzmim. That's already faculty. That's a flintstone.
No, I'm saying the nefesh.
No, it's not. It's the flintstone is an example for the second level yehcida, for core faculties.
What would be the example for
the source of the creator of the flintstone? I mean, that's the best thing I could come up with. Yeah, the thing that shaped it. Where flintstones come from? Maybe from some mountain pressure. I don't know. I mean, there are definitely examples for all this. It's manageable. Okay, so therefore, even though they're faculties, they're atzmim. So they really relate more. They go basar, the source, instead of being, like you said, the mamutza. It's that part of the mamutza. What means like it's representative of the etzem hanefesh, not representative of the faculties. It's the etzem hanefesh expressing itself, not faculties that are revealing. Right. Exactly. Harishena beget the mokal lekeches. There's a lot of parentheses here. Now there's a short line between. That means that they're not in the category of a source for the faculties. It's only that from them, automatically and naturally, and like without any effort, faculties emerge from there. Like when you talk about the flame, the second two levels, you have to fan it. Here, it just comes out from the etzem hanefesh. She'ein, and now another parentheses. Wow. She'ein hakeches atzmim mispalim b'metzias hakeches mehem. Because the core faculties are not affected, they're not influenced, they're not impacted by the faculties that come out of them. Something that's in the state of a source is affected by what you're doing. You let's say you fan the coal, flame comes out of it. It's impacted by it. Something in the category. So besides the two things he said before, that mokir is substance, and it begins to flow. There's a third thing. It's affected by the thing it's flowing toward. He's affected within himself. Like it says, anything that moves something has to be itself moving. You know, the rule is you can't move something if you're not moving yourself. If you, let's say, you hold your hand like this, you're not going to move anything. You have to move your hand, and then it can cause something else to move. So the cause is affected by the thing that it's causing. Right. Obviously, you talk about God, it's not like that. He's able to mania, not be, but that's talking about the rules of nature. And that's what it means, b'derech mamela. He's explained the word b'derech mamela. The core faculties are not mispol, are not impacted. That's why it's automatic. It's not here. If I have to move my hand, I'm impacted, and I have to do something. It's not b'derech mamela. A stone is not going to fly if I don't take a stone and throw it. invest my energy in it. Whereas here, imagine the faculties just flow out of it. There's no effort involved. Here's where the flintstone doesn't work, because the flintstone you have to strike it to get it out. Here's b'derech meila, it's not just coming automatically. And what extends from it is that they should become a source for the revealed faculties. Okay, so here is talking to level 3 now. We have the etzem nefesh, we have the keiches atzmim, the core faculties. Now the core faculties are not a source. From there it becomes a source, and that source becomes the root for the revealed. That's basically the keiches nalam, the mocker. What comes out of the core faculties automatically and without any effort and without any impact, and not even as a source, comes the source for the revealed faculties, because now he's explaining. Because you can't jump from core faculties to revealed faculties. Another parenthesis. Right. And the fact that at times we do find exceptions, that from the core faculties immediately expresses itself, that's when the faculties, that's like an example. Did you give the example like by wedding? Okay, yehcida, fine. But the example would be, that's when you're jumping. That's not regular natural flow. Now you're doing something extra, so then they're in a completely different state. What I said earlier, what it says in Samach Vav, that imagine the revelation of ideas that come from yechida. Yechida means the yehcida, the effort that comes from below. It's not being revealed to you, but through your hard work, through questions, through pilpul, like Talmud Bavli as opposed to Talmud Yerushalmi. That is like the striking, the yehcida, the effort of that brings out like a student that sharpens, that makes his teacher wiser through his questions, through his challenge. Like it says elsewhere. So what is that doing? That's bringing from keiches atzmim, but that's because it's a different type of level. So you jump the keiches nalamim in a way. Well, the fizet tzarich lemer. And according to this, you have to say the hamshachem keiches atzmim, that the extension from the core faculties, hagam shezeu rak ma shenimtza mehem. It's only even though it only extends, emerges from them. It's only a sibah, not a mokir. Only like a distant cause. Nevertheless, there is some commensurate, some relationship, some erech, some relative relationship, and it's not completely apart. So what he did was, now he said, he gave an exception. No, one second. It's a question and an answer here. He said that from core faculties, you can't jump to gluyim. But there are exceptions. The exception is when something is done that's exceptional. When there's a particular effort and you work hard, then it's like striking the flintstone. So you don't have to go through the middle stage, so to speak. That extra effort, the kushis, the sharpening, brings out from the core faculties. And when that happens, the core faculties are closer than not shalei be'erech, quite in the natural flow. If you took natural flow, there is a shalei be'erech. It's like only a sibah. But this is an exception. Now he goes back after the parentheses. Ki'im mashenimtza ma'keiches v'hu b'chinas mekedei ha'keiches.
You have to read like the line before the parentheses.
Right. He's going back, not this exception. He's saying that keiches agloim mamish inem be'erech liyisnim ma'keiches asmim. The revealed faculties are not commensurate. They're not in the same league to be able to extend from the core faculties. They need a middle ground. Ki'im mashenimtza ma'keiches. What comes from the core faculties is only the root of the faculties, the source of the faculties. That's not helam shein b'mitzias. That's already now of substance. And it's already an extension, a mokir. It's already be a type of source. The seichel hagoli. And this is called a hidden transmission. This is the keiches nalamim.
It's already a substance.
Right. Here he goes. Like we see from the power of the archetypal core intelligence, extends or transmits to be a root for revealed seichel. This is the keich hamaskil. This is still not seichel, but now you already have the power. It's like the pilot flame. You have the power. Keich hamaskil means the power to conceive of ideas. So in the nefesh, you don't see anything. Keich hamaskil resides somewhere. It doesn't it resides in the so-called invisible brain, or you can call it the unconscious. This is not even unconscious, what we talked. In the nefesh, it's not even unconscious. It's a soul level. It's core. It's not even a source. Unconscious now is already like a memory that you don't remember, but it's there. It's things in your mind. Like let's say you learned something 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You learned how to drive a car. You haven't driven a car for 10 years. You're going to remember how to drive. Bicycle. Okay. Or other things. You learned something. It may be rusty, but it's there. So there you already have. It's already in the category of seichel. It's just maybe not revealed. This is level 3. This is not yechida. This is already the keich hamaskil shebenefesh. The keich hamaskil b'chinas mitzias davar. The power to conceive of ideas is a substance. Relatively speaking, obviously, compared to the archetypal core intelligence, hanatua mushas benafshe, which is implanted and rooted in the nefesh. But compared to the fourth lowest level, it's not yet revealed. It's not yet mitzias sichli. You can't call it yet an intelligent idea. Because it's still a keich chiyuli, it's still a root for all intelligence. It's different than the other hiyuli, not hiyuli atzmi. And it's known that every keich chiyuli, every archetypal power, every core power, is mushlal, is negates, is how do you say mushlal? Not repels, beyond mushlal. It's negated. It negates, is opposite from, is contrary to the giluyim, the revelations that come from it. The same thing with the power to conceive ideas, being that it's still at that type of potential state. I'll call minesichlim on all types of intelligence. You have to say you have to say that it's beyond. It's in contrast to the existence of seichel. Even in the highest levels of seichel. Like it says elsewhere. Nevertheless, it's not completely negated from intelligence, because after we said it's already an extension. At least an extension from the core root potential, the core root faculty. Therefore, it's in some type of form and some type of substance. Only it's a hamshach alamas. It's a concealed transmission. The Ayin hamshach alamas hu shamushlam mitzias hadavar. Hamshach alamas, meaning a concealed transmission, is mushlal, is negates, and is contrary to an object, something that has substance. Shumakere love, that it's a source that for which it is a source to. Avleina mushlam etzem hadavar, but it's not contrary to the essential etzem hadavar from the thing itself. Yeah, the Shemushlam Etzem Hadavar, from the essence of the thing. Yeah, meaning the concept of the thing. It's not Mushlam from the concept of it, like the core, its essence. Yeah. Okay, so what does he say in this chapter? Wow, this chapter basically is all again elaboration. Didn't even get back to the R Shem Tov. Still have to get back to that. But all elaboration to tell us about the concealed, and it's an example. To understand the concealed level that the 10 spheres reveal, which is the 10 hidden spheres, he gave the full example of Keiches Atzmim, and basically 4 levels. The core, essential, archetypal faculties, it's really 5 levels. It's the essence, Etzem HaNefesh. Then from that comes Keiches Atzmim, core faculties. From there comes a Mokir, for seichel, let's say, which is already a source. Did I say 1 second? Keches atzmim. No, four levels. Yeah. There's the etzem. There's the etzem hanefesh. There's the keches atzmim, the core faculties, which is yechida or arich, as he calls it. Then there's the keches nelem, where it calls hamshach and elemis. It's already a source. And then there's the revealed faculties. And what we have reveals to us, not just it reveals all the way back to the core faculties. That's what he's telling us. Except that core faculty is a completely different state of being. Huh? Yeah. Kitzur. Summary. V'gam she'eses fizz megalas b'chin she'eses fizz hagnuz is b'hamshachosan. That's maybe the emphasis of hamshachosan. Here, not just the keches neses fizz hagnuz be'etzem. B'hamshachosan. V'gam behem v'yad mishgul. Okay. So the 10 spheres also reveal the 10 spheres as concealed in their transmission. So he's already comparing it to the mushal. Yeah, the hamshachosan. There's keches, the etzem of the 10 spheres. He says he also reveals the 10 spheres of etzem. Okay. Right. Okay, there's already being the example. So it reveals as they are already a makir, meaning that they're already extending, and also gili matzmusan, also reveals from their essence. For example, this is an addition in the parentheses. This parenthesis is an addition in the kitchen. Example, the core of the soul that's completely negated from and removed from faculties altogether. Encompasses within its faculty. Another expression he didn't use inside. It's with the soul from the beginning of its coming to being. The soul automatically has these faculties. And Lamaila, it's again addition. It's going to say Savus. And above, it's only an Erein Sof. What is he saying? What's all in it now? Keches. I'm not sure. And that's why the keches, the faculties, are also core faculties. They're in a shapeless form, not in any substance at all. Utterly no substance. And they're not in any transmission or extension at all. And they're not a source at all. Except from them extends, expresses, emerges the root of the faculties. Not the faculties themselves. And therefore it's not completely, infinitely distant. So in other words, there's a process. The revealed faculties don't jump. It doesn't jump from the core faculties, the revealed. It jumps from the core to the source to the revealed. So it's not completely ein arech. Meaning there's a Gilead Helam going on here. Because he wants to say that, remember, that atzilus reveals the concealed. If it's if there'd be a jump from the core, if there'd be no hamshacha of the 10 hidden spheres, where's the reveal? You're again a jump. So this shows that there's no jump. Like the power of intelligence, which is the root of seichel, the source of seichel. It's a concealed transmission. It means it negates. It's apart from, removed from the existence of the substance of seichel. But it's not removed from the etzem concept of seichel. It's already seichel now, as opposed to the core faculties where you can't even call it a shape of seichel. Okay. Chapter 96. We did page 185 through the top of 187.